Hello. Thank you for joining me today on this cold and snowy day in South Arkansas. As we come together to study God's Word. We've been studying in the book of Ecclesiastes, and we've been looking at Solomon's attempt to find happiness. Solomon looked to wisdom, and he did not find happiness there, so he went to the other extreme, and he started looking for happiness in folly, that is, in having fun and pleasure. He didn't find happiness there. He looked for happiness in great accomplishments. And yet that left him unfulfilled also. And because of that, Solomon came to the conclusion that there is no profit under the sun, a statement that he says some 29 times in Ecclesiastes. And we know that when we look at things from a human standpoint, from an earthly standpoint, that there's some truth to what he said, but what we have to do is learn to look at things from a more spiritual standpoint than what he did at first. Solomon, because he came to believe that there was no profit under the sun, he started to hate life under the sun. He reflected on his wisdom, and we see this in Ecclesiastes 2 in verses 12 through 17. And I'm not going to read through all of that, but what I will say is that I will start reading in verse 14, and here's the conclusion he came to. He said, "The wise man's eyes are in his head, but the fool walks in darkness. Yet I myself perceived that the same event happens to them all. So I said in my heart, as it happens to the fool, it also happens to me. And why was I then more wise? Then I said in my heart, this also is vanity." And so he came to the conclusion that, yes, wisdom was better than pleasure. They still were both empty because they both came to that same conclusion. The wise man and the fool both die. And he tells us in verse 17, "Therefore I hated life, because the work that was done under the sun was distressing to me, for all is vanity and grasping for the wind." He contemplated wisdom and madness, and he found that wisdom was greater. It outweighed madness and folly and benefit, because light excels darkness. And there is some truth to that. We see that wisdom brings advantage over others. We look in Ecclesiastes 7:11. It says, "Wisdom is good with an inheritance and profitable to those who see the sun." Wisdom brings us protection, as he tells us in verse 12 of Ecclesiastes chapter 7. "For wisdom is a defense as money is a defense, but the excellence of knowledge is that wisdom gives life to those who have it." He tells us in Ecclesiastes 7 verse 19 that wisdom brings strength. He tells us in verse 18 of Ecclesiastes chapter 9 that wisdom is better than weapons. He tells us in Ecclesiastes 10 verse 10 that wisdom brings success. But Solomon did come to realize that the ultimate advantage of wisdom is vanity, because both the fool and the wise die. And after death, there's no more remembrance of the wise man than there is of the fool. So therefore Solomon hated life, because all the work done under the sun, it is striving after wind. And so he begins to reflect on his labor, and he comes to hate his labor, because he came to realize that when he died, all that he had accomplished, he'd be forced to leave to another. And who knows if the one he left it to would be a fool or be wise. And don't we all have that same struggle? And he'd be forced to leave it to someone who had not labored for it in the way that he did. So he came to this conclusion, in the end, what do I have for all my labors? He had sorrow, grief, and restlessness. And so looking at life under the sun, Solomon came to hate life. But he also told us back in chapter 2 and verse 9 that wisdom remained with him. And so for the first time now we see him share with us what one should do in life. He accepts that life is from the hand of God. We read this in Ecclesiastes 2 verses 24 through 26. And he tells us there that nothing is better for a man than he should eat and drink, and that his soul should enjoy good in his labor. He sees that this is a gift from God. He says, "For who can eat or who can have enjoyment more than I? For God gives wisdom and knowledge and joy to a man who is good in his sight. But to the sinner he gives the work of gathering and collecting, that he may give to him who is good before God. Their thoughts always vanity and grasping for the wind. For the first time here, we see Solomon look above the flood, and he looks at things from a more godly perspective. And he sees that, you know what, there's a reason in living right. There's a reason in living your life to God, because God can bless you in those circumstances where he cannot if you're living your life contrary to how he would have you live. Let us keep God in mind as we go through this life. Let us live for him. Let us give him the glory for all that he has done for us. Let us realize that our labors are not an opportunity for us to leave a legacy or a name for ourselves, but are an opportunity for us to live for him and to lead others to him. Thank you for watching today, and I invite you to worship with us at the Bearden Church of Christ. We meet at 745 Cedar Street. If you're coming from out of town, that's Arkansas Highway 203. We meet on Sunday mornings at 10 a.m. for Bible study, worship services at 11 a.m. and 5 p.m. Wednesday night, we meet for midweek Bible study at 7 o'clock. I invite you to come be a part of us. Thank you for watching today. Goodbye and God bless.